everybody, so this is my presentation on Hungary with Viktor Orbán. Firstly, I just wanted to talk about how it is so ironic that Boris Johnson got the coronavirus right after we talked about him. Like, what? Anyways, so my presentation looks like this. And Hungary is just circled there so conveniently, just in case you did not know the geographic whereabouts of Hungary, because I definitely did not. So the first slide that we're going to talk about is Hungary's history. Also, I'm so sorry if this presentation goes really long. I have a lot of information to cover, but Hungary was controlled by Russia, who is a communist country. And just a little definition of Russia, of communism, is that it is an individual people do not own the land, factories, or machinery. Instead, the government or the whole community owns these things. So I mean, if you're in a communist country, you really have no national identity or identity whatsoever. And Hungary got out of being with the Soviet Union and got to be an independent country in 1989. So next, who is Viktor Orbán and how does he lead? So he was the prime minister since 2010. He has served 3 different terms, and he also wants illiberal democracy, which I just did 3 different points for this. The first one is that national identity is over everything, including democracy. No immigration. They have very, very strict borders in Hungary. And lastly, he's really against free institutions as a whole. So the first discussion question is, do you think Hungary will ever be able to adopt a democracy along with keeping their own national identity? This question will be a lot easier to not only comprehend, but like also to just answer at the end of this presentation, because we're going to go over that. So who or what is Orbán against? So Orbán is really against anybody living or working with people who are not Hungarian when they are like inside of the country. So the reason that he's so against George Soros is because he is Hungarian born, but he works with people outside of Hungary, and he gives money to NPOs who help immigrants, and Orbán doesn't like that. And then CEU, which is that university that was being spoken about in the video, it's just because they're a free institution and he wants to be able to control what they do, and he's not able to because they're free. And then immigration. Immigration is a huge problem in Hungary. So next, exclusivity for national identity or authoritarian rule. So the people who are against immigration, they're mostly older generation, and it's because they've been through the communism that Soviet Union put them through. When they were communists, they were not able to have a national identity. They were not able to embrace their culture and be able to have this great sense of identity because they were communists and the government was over them, and they had to do what the government said, which is kind of similar to what Orbán is doing, but like in a different manner, you know what I mean? So Zoltán Kovács, he is just a government official who speaks for the government. He said that the EU needs to establish the capabilities of, quote, beyond borders of Europe to help those that are in need, end quote, and that Hungary/Europe in general needs to, quote, go to the spot instead of bringing them to Europe. So he's not saying, we don't care about anybody except for Hungary. He's not saying that at all. Literally, Orbán and this government official is just like, hey, we just don't want y'all coming into our country because we don't want to sacrifice our national identity. They don't really, they're not against helping other people. They're just like, we just don't want it happening in our country. We can help y'all outside of the country. And then people who are for immigration or who think that it is an authoritarian rule are most likely going to be younger generation. They're going to be middle class and probably like professionals that are out in the field working. This is because I believe that they have not been through communism before because they weren't old enough to remember, or they were born after Hungary became a free country. But basically what they say is that like Orbán banned newspapers so that the media wouldn't be able to reach out to them, and also that Hungary is just one of the most ethnically uniform countries in Europe, and like, you know, how are people supposed to have like the correct socialization and things like that. So I mean, like, what do y'all think? Do y'all think that it's exclusivity for national identity, or do you think that it's authoritarian rule? So the next discussion question is kind of along those lines. So do you think that Hungary's culture and or identity would be dismantled if immigration was allowed? And do you agree with Zoltán Kovács and his idea of keeping immigrants out of the country? Kovács also said, he was like, what was the exact quote? He said, "It's nobody's business to have political opinion on Hungary but the Hungarians." I feel like I have to agree with that man, but you know, everybody has their own opinion. So how does this make him populist? What makes Orbán populist? Literally, so much makes him populist, it's crazy. So first of all, we have a new definition of populism from CEU's president, who is also a professor at the school. He said, quote, "A populist leader is one who represents the people, then uses the mandate to go after the people's enemies, like free press, universities, etc." Not only did Orbán go over this president's university, but he also went for free press. Newspapers are no longer allowed to be printed in Hungary. Now, the country right above Hungary, which I am blanking on the name, but they do print out newspapers that are able to be sent and like kind of like filed through Hungary. But still, like, Hungary is not getting the correct representation because they're not able to produce the media that they need to produce, and that is a big thing that makes Orbán populist. The next thing is the way that he uses like the I against the we. He said, quote, "Millions of immigrants threatening us from the south." So the immigrants are the they, and then like the we, or like the, yeah, like the we is like, we are in Hungary, we need to stay in Hungary, we don't want anybody else in Hungary, and then the immigrants are like they, you know. So that also makes him very much populism. Also, the fact that he was in the Fidesz group, which is conservative, and the Fidesz group also makes up a huge percentage of the majority vote whenever people are elected, is a huge reason that he's populism. And there's also a lot of other ones that are on this slide if you want more information. So this is the election wheel. You don't have to worry about this 2014 one, but the 2018 one, this was actually the same diagram that was on the second video, but it's just a little bit different. So the Fidesz party has 133 seats. I'm not good at math, so I don't really know what that math is, but I mean, 133 versus all of these, that is a huge majority, and that is another reason why Orbán is populist. And so lastly, the last discussion question I have for y'all is, Zoltán Kovács also stated that Hungary, quote, "wants to stay with Europe, and that is why we are frank," end quote. This is about them staying in the EU. So do you believe him, or do you think that Hungary will eventually leave the EU? And if so, do you think that Hungary is strong enough to be alone? Just like as a free country, just nobody helping them out. Do you think that they'll be able to be alone? So yeah, here's my citations, and that is all. Thank y'all so much for listening.